Well, Carmarthen is a new constituency, officially known by its Welsh name, Caerfyddin. Taking into account the new boundaries, it would have been won in 2019 by the Conservatives, with more than a 4,500 majority over Plaid Cymru. But as Andy Davies reports, it could be a very different result this time round. Here is that piece.
Cooked breakfasts in one room, a cattle auction next door. In Carmarthenshire, many a vote next week will come from farmers. Many here unimpressed by what they've witnessed so far.
There's a lot of mistakes done by the Conservatives with these new gambling allegations and everything. I don't think you can really, I don't know, what party can you trust would be the question I'd ask, really.
125, 130, 130. The politicians don't take agriculture serious enough. 90 God, a 90 pound made, a 95.
You ask a question, but they never give an answer. They'll go round the corner and give another answer, but not the proper answer we all waited for.
Amid sweeping boundary changes in Wales, where 40 MPs become 32, the battle for the new seat of Caerfyddin is perhaps too close to call. In this strong Welsh-speaking area, the Welsh nationalists Plaid Cymru are pinning their hopes on Andy Davies, a local dairy farmer.
All right.
A lot has changed in the nearly 60 years since Plaid Cymru saw its first ever MP elected, here as it happens. And yet the party is still struggling to expect more than a handful of MPs at this election. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a perception that Plaid Cymru is for Welsh speakers only. On doorsteps I think we need to get a message across that Plaid Cymru is for anybody who lives in Wales and is passionate about the future of Wales, wants to make sure that we have fairness and we have an ambition for Wales.
The campaigns here have zoned in on the local, like anger over 60 miles of planned power lines from wind turbines, to the national, where the Welsh Labour government's default 20 miles an hour speed limit, vast NHS waiting lists and planned farming policies adorn many a Tory campaign speech.
And to think, Labour Wales is what Sir Keir Starmer calls his blueprint for Britain.
Every 100 yards or so, there's another sign. It was back to 30, 40, 20.
But how much harder now might be the chances of their Caerfyddin candidate, Simon Hart, the Tories' chief whip and former Welsh secretary, as others in his party, two in Wales, are being investigated over election betting. We were told he was unavailable for an interview for this report. Curbing net zero policies is an aim of Reform's candidate here, whose leader chose South Wales recently to launch his policy platform. Back again! Framed in repeated attacks on Labour's track record in Wales. From Larne at its southern edge, the constituency stretches inland and eastwards, into the Amman Valley, where Labour's candidate is from.
Just wanted to thank everyone for a very productive morning out on...
At 26, one of the youngest contesting this election.
I really think that we deserve a fresh start here. On a personal level, I think being a young person from a single parent family who I'm hopeful can bring something different to Parliament is also something that spurs me on. Yeah, off we go.
But is her messaging on economic security for families, amongst other things, being overshadowed by the continuing focus on the party leader in Wales, Vaughan Gething? The First Minister recently lost a vote of confidence in the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd, criticised for accepting a £200,000 leadership campaign donation from a company whose owner had been convicted of environmental offences.
And are you worried that that could cost you votes next week?
To be honest, I think when we're out knocking doors, people are able to differentiate between the Senedd and Westminster, and the key focus for people when I'm on the doors is the cost of living crisis, making sure that we get change, and there is certainly an appetite for that.
Labour are here in their numbers and polling strongly nationally. Plaid Cymru, whose leader visited yesterday, know they've a fight on their hands.
The swing for Labour at the moment is huge, and we're fighting against that. But what we can do is make sure that our message is coming across loud and clear.
Other candidates include those from the Lib Dems and Greens. Such is the closely fought contest for Caerfyddin.
Andy Davies there, and this is a full list of the candidates running in the Caerfyddin constituency. Well, earlier I spoke to the leader of Plaid Cymru, Rhyn ap Iorwerth, the latest in our leader interviews series, and I started by asking why voters should opt for Plaid Cymru given the small number of MPs they've previously returned to Westminster.
Plaid Cymru MPs, though relatively small in number, have always punched well above their weight. And I think in this election, the reason to vote Plaid Cymru is clearer than usual.
You always say that. In 2010, Plaid Cymru's Westminster leader, Elfyn Llwyd, said, "Vote for Plaid, we punch above our weight before and we'll punch above our weight again." You're recycling 14-year-old sound bites in this election. Did you know that?
But some things are ageless. You know, the needs of our communities to be heard at Westminster.
And I've heard you say that there's little between the Conservatives and Labour on public spending. I don't quite understand what would be different.
Well, the IFS agree with us, don't they? You know, both of them wedded to £18 billion worth more cuts, and you're bound together to a conspiracy of silence, says the IFS.
Your manifesto calls for income tax, specifically bans and thresholds, to be given to Wales, the power to set them. But you don't say how you would change those income tax bans and thresholds.
We make it very clear that the thresholds should actually go higher. The freezing of thresholds in recent years have brought so many people into paying tax for the first time, have made people move up tax. It's the stealth tax by the Conservatives. We want to have those flexibilities here in Wales.
Hang on. That's not in your manifesto, is it? Raising tax thresholds in line with inflation.
No, what's in our manifesto is that we want to have those levers that we can make decisions on the tax landscape in Wales. That's as clear as it could be.
You've just said you'd like to have income tax thresholds rise in line with inflation, which is not what the Conservatives are doing and not what Labour are doing. Do you know how much that would cost?
But this is exactly the kind of lack of honesty that we are seeing from the Conservatives.
You haven't got a concrete proposal to give our audience about what you'd actually do with the powers to change income tax?
No, what we're saying is we want those levers in Wales. When in government in Wales, you then look at how you're able to use that to our advantage. There have been taxation powers that were given to Scotland from the very start of devolution 25 years ago. There have been some powers in Wales that we've had, but unless those powers are really usable, unless they're really flexible, unless they can be used in nuanced ways, they can be, they don't give you the power that you can to make the kind of difference that you succeed.
We live in pretty uncertain times. Do you think an independent Wales should not be a part of NATO?
I think an independent Wales would want to have a very close relationship with NATO. There is an associate membership that people have. Ireland, for example, with NATO, that would be a decision for that independent Wales. Clearly, NATO...
You have a policy on this, don't you, Plaid Cymru? Isn't the policy that Wales should not be a member of NATO?
But I'm talking about associate membership of NATO, which is something different. What I'm saying is that NATO is important, and Wales's relationship with NATO would be important, but that wouldn't necessarily have to mean membership. The Republic of Ireland is a good example of that.
So you'd like associate membership of NATO, but not full membership of NATO?
That is where I am. But this would be a question for an independent Wales.
What is it about NATO that gives you reservations about having full membership?
This is about what relationship that I believe an independent Wales would want with NATO. I think it should be a close one. I tend to look at things in politics as not necessarily being black and white, and we need to have that debate.
Un cwestiwn bach arall.
Yeah.
Dyw Cymru ddim yn yr Euros tro yma. Felly, pwy ydych chi'n cefnogi? Pwy ydych chi eisiau I ennill y tournament?
Wel, dwi yn cefnogi Ffrainc. Dwi'n fan mawr o'n Mbappe, mae rai fi ddeud. Ond dwi'n methu mwynhau yr Euros yn iawn oherwydd bod Cymru ddim yno.
Mae'r cwestiwn yma'n dod I fyny yn dweud, ond pam ddim Lloegr?
Nhw wedi'n gelyn pêl-droed mwy ni. Ydy chwaraeon ydy hwn?
Cymdogion ni hefyd, ydyn nhw?
Chwaraeon ydy hwn. Dwi'n gefnogwr Cardiff City, a dwi'n meddwl bod ti hefyd, Ciaran, ond dydy'r berthynas rhwng Caerdydd ac Abertawe ddim bob amser ar y gorau, ond chwaraeon ydy hynny, a dim byd arall. Mi ydw i'n gymwys I chwarae I Loegr gan bod y mam I wedi cael ei geni yn Lerpwl, ond Cymru ydy'n hîm pêl-droed I, a'r tîm da ni'n mwynhau ei giro fwyaf wrth gwrs ydy Lloegr, fel am y chwaraeon yn gweithio.
Dim comment gen I. Rhyn ap Iorwerth, diolch yn fawr iawn am y siarad, Annie. Rhyn ap Iorwerth, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Ciaran, diolch yn fawr.
There you are. Well, joining me now are the Secretary of State for Wales, David T.C. Davies, and Joe Stevens, who's the Shadow Welsh Secretary. And let's begin with that breaking news that Tata is taking steps to shut down the blast furnaces at its Port Talbot steel plant sooner than planned. Joe Stevens, to you first. I mean, you could be the Welsh Secretary next Friday. Next Sunday, Tata could start this process sooner than planned. Would you be able to do anything to undo it?
Well, what I would repeat to Tata, which is what I've been saying to them and Keir Starmer has been saying to them for many months, is please do not make any irreversible decisions before the election, and that would include shutting down the blast furnace early. And I would just urge them to sit round the table with the unions and try to negotiate a way out of this, because there are nearly 3,000 jobs at risk here, and I am concerned about people's livelihoods right across South Wales.
It sounds like they've made that irreversible decision, and that could be 3,000 jobs lost, or the process starting at least 2 days into your tenure.
It doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen, and that's why there should be grown-up discussions, sitting around a table to try to come to some agreement. This is not, this is not the way to deal with it.
Okay, David T.C. Davies, you are the current Welsh Secretary. This is in your inbox right now. What is your message to Tata Steel tonight?
Well, my message actually is that Tata Steel made it very clear some time ago that they were going to close those blast furnaces because they were losing £1.5 million a day, and the UK government was willing to come up with a deal that involved £500 million of investment to create an arc furnace. This deal will save 5,000 jobs. On top of that, we came forward with a fund worth £100 million, of which 80 was coming from UK government, to support anyone losing their jobs, and there'd be 2,800 job losses. It was the only deal around. And I'm sorry that Labour have given false hope to people by suggesting that there is some other option out there that would have saved every single one of those jobs, because there isn't, and there never was. And Tata's senior management have made that clear to me. They've made it. Sorry, they've made it clear to Labour senior Labour politicians as well.
£500 million? Are you still going to give them that £500 million, given that they brought these plans forward? There are jobs on the line right now.
The jobs, the deal was very simple. Tata were originally planning to close down the blast furnaces and pull out of steel making completely in Wales. It would have cost 8,000 jobs and another 12,500 in the supply chain. The deal that we struck was that as they built an arc furnace, we would pay them £500 million towards that. They would be contributing £750 million, so more than half of the cost.
Yeah.
And that deal would save 5,000 jobs. And it's a pity.
Okay.
That deal is still available, of course it is, because we want to save as many jobs as possible, and what we don't want to do is undermine an investment worth £1.2 billion and 5,000 jobs.
Let's move on to the election, because Wales is right at the centre of this betting scandal. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said he's furious about it. The candidate in the safest Tory seat in Wales is implicated in this, and Rishi Sunak says he can't support him. Are you furious?
Well, look, I've seen what's gone on. I know there are 2 Conservative candidates who've been suspended and 1 Labour candidate suspended somewhere else, not in Wales. The fact of the matter is I feel very disappointed by what's gone on. But, I mean, there are a number of scandals going on at the moment, and every political party needs to recognise that there are people who've not lived up to the sort of standards that we would like, including the Labour Party at the moment, whose own First Minister is refusing to acknowledge a vote of no confidence after he took £200,000 from a convicted criminal whose company, by the way, had received £400,000 from the Welsh Government state-backed bank.
Let's ask Labour about Labour then, shall we? Because Joe Stevens, David T.C. Davies was saying that the Welsh Labour First Minister has lost a vote of confidence in the Senedd, but on top of that, Wales has got the worst performing schools in the UK and the longest waiting times in history in Wales in the NHS. Is that a record, especially on schools and education, that you're proud of?
Waiting lists in Wales, compared to England, they're growing in England more than 8 times faster than in Wales. We have reduced by 70% our long waiting times in the NHS in Wales. We've got 310,000 more people able to access a dentist because we've renegotiated dental contracts. And on education, I am really sick and tired of hearing the Tories doing down our teachers, our teaching staff and our children who went through such a difficult time during COVID. They deserve our respect, not to be criticised all the time.
Is that a yes? You're proud of Labour's record on schools and hospitals and the NHS in Wales?
I accept, as Welsh Government accept, that there is more to do, but
Not a
there
yes,
there are struggles across every part of the UK in terms of education and NHS services. The last time we had two Labour governments, at both ends of the M4, we had the shortest waiting lists in history and the highest patient satisfaction in the history of the NHS. We've done it before, we can do it again.
David T.C. Davies, if voters in Wales are wanting a change, is that change to kick the Conservatives out of office?
Well, I'm sorry, but we've actually had a Labour government here in Wales for 25 years, so we in Wales know exactly what the blueprint that Keir Starmer refers to actually is. And it is. Joe can't get away from this. 20,000 people have been waiting more than 2 years for treatment in a nation of 3 million people. It's not the Conservatives who are saying we've got low educational standards, it's the OECD, and Joe can't even bring herself to acknowledge this. And on top of this, we see money being thrown away on things like £120 million for extra Senedd members. You know, I mean, that is money that could have gone into Port Talbot to support steelworkers, and instead we're getting extra politicians. We've got this ludicrous blanket 20-mile-an-hour limit across the whole of Wales, which nobody wants. Well, 500,000 people have signed a petition calling for that to be scrapped, and Labour aren't listening. This is the blueprint for the rest of the United Kingdom, and that's why when I go out and I'm talking to people, I'm hearing a lot of people saying, yes, they are, people have had concerns over things that have happened over the last 5 years, but a great deal of concern at the moment about this Labour government's policies.
Let's let Joe Stevens respond.
What you're not hearing from the Conservatives in this general election campaign is anything about their record in government, and the reason for that is it's been catastrophic for the country, including here in Wales. Crashed the economy, people are living with the consequences of that every day, and if in their manifesto they can find this £71 billion of unfunded spending commitments, they'll do exactly what Liz trusted all over again.
Numbers in this election.
No, these are unfunded spending commitments. They are savings they can't find and commitments they can't pay for.
Joe Stevens, you have a record to defend here. You've been in power for 25 years, and as you heard there, there's no getting away from it. 2-year waits in the NHS in Wales, more than 20,000 people. In England, it's 200 and something.
And Welsh Government have invested £1 billion extra in order to bring down the backlog from the pandemic. And as I've said, they have come down from their longest waits by 70%. They would be the first to acknowledge that there's more to do. But the fact is the Conservatives can't run on their record because they have no record to be proud of. They've achieved nothing.
Final word to David T.C. Davies. Are you proud of your record, and has it been a good campaign for Rishi Sunak?
Absolutely. We've got inflation running at 2%. We've got unemployment running at 3%. We've got the joint fastest growth in the whole of the G7, along with Canada. The economic record is very good. This is what is going to change if there is a Labour government, because they have got £8.5 billion of completely unfunded spending commitments, which is going to result in extra taxes or extra borrowing.
OK. David T.C. Davies, we have to leave it there. And Joe Stevens, thank you ever so much, both of you, for speaking with us tonight. So, what are the other parties pledging to do for Wales? Reform UK say they would reinvigorate the Welsh economy by raising personal income tax thresholds and scrap net zero policies to reinvest in public services. The Wales Green Party is proposing a green economic transformation and wants to increase universal credit and scrap the 2-child benefit cap, while the Welsh Liberal Democrats are openly saying they would put up some taxes to find more money for social care and the NHS.
There are parts of Wales where people are looking for something a little bit more radical than what Labour are offering. Labour are offering much the same sort of spending commitments that the Tories are offering. That's not going to deliver the improvements in public services. We're talking about some modest tax increases on big businesses and on the banks, for instance, that can make sure we could have £760 million more to spend on public services in Wales.